There is a thought that may be radical to some that African myths can be the foundation of some forms of African spirituality. What does this mean, and can it compete with the traditional expressions of African spirituality that has so long been represented by the Christian Church and Islam? Here to discuss this with us is our guest, Akwesi Prince Mensa. Akwesi Prince Mensa is a community storyteller, ethnographer, yogi, and critical educator. He is based in Cincinnati, Ohio, and comes from the neighborhood of Evanston, the educating community where he was born and raised. He received his BA in political science from Xavier University from Cincinnati, Ohio, his MA in comparative education from Institute of Education, University of London, and he is working on his doctoral degree at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. He has taught in the Philippines, Ghana, the UK, and in Cincinnati in elementary schools. His work is centered around using traditional African mythologies as means to promote collective healing for our people and political action for Black youth in the Cincinnati area. Welcome, Prince.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here.
So let's get into this now. So what is myth?
Well, yeah, myth, definitely goes in many different directions, and definitely in places where Black radicals, discuss these things. Myth can be seen as a political project as well, and as also it serves as a moral compass. But for today's discussion, I really like to see the relationship between both of those things on the sense of like how myths can serve not only as a moral compass for spirituality and ontological wholeness, but as well as to provide an impetus for the revolutionary struggle that we seek to engage here within the earth. I'm really influenced a lot by traditional African mythologies. And so in my particular work, I like to use myths as a way to help participants to describe what it's like to live within racial regimes such as which we're living in today through the lens of mythological symbols and things like that. Myths definitely have a way of not only making meaning for human experiences just in general, and a lot of them comes through such as folk tales, creation stories and things like that. But there's a code within mythologies that shows specific African worldviews. And if we can extract what those worldviews are that are embedded within those myths, that might be able to create a great political practice in terms of how to move forward, in terms of how we engage in political struggles within racial regimes like ours.
Wow, that's interesting. So let me ask you a question, Prince. How did you come upon this as a way of how was you introduced to this? Could you give us sort of like a timeline of your own spiritual journey?
Yeah, sure, definitely. I was raised in a very eclectic household. My mother is like a Unitarian, and my father was like one of those like Pentecostal folks and things like that. Even though my parents weren't together by the time I could kind of come to remember like events in my childhood, they definitely helped to shape my own particular worldviews. I grew up predominantly Christian. And I was the poster boy for Christianity, so to speak. But then I had a radical shift, and that shift occurred when I was a junior in college. I had a chance to study abroad in Ghana, and that shift really occurred when I visited the Elmina Castle, which is what I think for me was the one of the hero's journey or the hero's calling, kind of like the climax, I guess you might want to say, towards exploring mythologies. Coming from a Christian background and then stepping into those slave dungeons and seeing a church on top of these dungeons, it really shattered me in a lot of different ways, that I'm still processing, that I'm still asking questions on myself. And I began to realize like what Frantz Fanon and Dr. Frank Wilderson often emphasize, the void, the nothingness, so to speak. And I just realized that I needed to find my own reference to my own quote unquote humanity, so to speak. And I just couldn't find that anymore within the Christian faith. So after I left Elmina Castle, I was hungry to find traditional stories, any kind of forms of spirituality that would sustain me and also contain the trauma, the generational trauma that I felt. Because, you know, going through Elmina Castle, like as many other Africans can explain, you have an experience. And I had a very significant experience. And when I would tell my former church members like what I had experienced, they couldn't relate, and they encouraged me to to back off of it or pray about it and things like that. And I just wasn't having that, at all. I knew what I felt, and what I felt was definitely real. And it just began this course of unlearning, so to speak. So it's like decolonizing. We have like a formative like faith tradition out of that. I don't know if I would consider myself like an agnostic or something like that. But I really found a strong place for me to explore African traditional religions, honestly, through my yoga teacher training of all places. I was the only black guy in my yoga teaching program. It's the Cincinnati Yoga School, based here, of course, in Cincinnati. But what is interesting about this particular yoga school, not only was it the first yoga school here in Cincinnati, but it is quite unique amongst different schools of yoga. So I studied what's called Vishwa Yoga. It's kind of like the like not universal, but more of like the Unitarian form of yoga. So my yoga teacher, Yogi William Brashear, really encouraged us to make our own experience out of our yoga teacher training. And so I approached him and said, hey, like, this is where I'm at. I really like to ground myself in these traditional spiritual systems. And, how do you think that's going to work? And his eyes lit up and he said, hey, you do what you have to do. So the Sri Aurobindo is a school of thought. Isn't really talked about a whole lot. In fact, some people would say that he is the Malcolm X of yoga. He was a decolonial yogi. He was trained in Western philosophy. And of course, he was a colonized subject as well, being in colonized parts of India. And he basically formed a synthesis between how to emerge and also connect different schools of thought out there in the world into one. And he's like an integrationist, not integrationist, but yeah, integrationist, but not in terms of like, civil rights or whatever, but in terms of thinking about epistemological systems as being all one, as also expressing the same things through different faces. And so there was room to explore those explore African spiritualities within this particular school of thought. And so within that, we studied, or at least I studied, a field of psychology called depth psychology, which is very different from the Freudian model, which kinds of looks at the ways in which how the collective conscious and the collective unconscious of our species are essentially the same. And the more I started kind of digging into that, I was like, oh, okay, well, this explains why, all religions kind of talk about the same things, because the psyche is kind of like constructed in the exact same way. But when I was doing some more of my own personal research in my yoga teacher training, I came across this book, The African Unconscious, by Dr. Bruce Bynum. And it was funny, he was actually on Dr. Ball's show, and I was really excited, to definitely watch that show. So long story short, what I gathered from that book and how I integrated that in my studies is the fact that amongst African people, we have a strong imprint on the collective conscious and the collective unconscious of our species here on this planet. That is to say that if African people were the first people to evolve on the planet, and therefore they were like the first ones to conjure certain dreams and symbols and things like that. And the more human beings began to leave Africa and then begin to go to other places across the globe, that African unconscious began to carry itself wherever human beings went. So we seem to have a strong root, I think. If what Dr. Edward or Bruce Bynum is saying is correct, what I think is correct is that all of these religions that we see across the globe are really expressions of the first people who evolved here to begin with. And a lot of times when I have conversations with some of our organic scholars who might say, well, there were pyramids in Central America, or there were pyramids in China. Black people must have gone there and taught them how to do that. Well, I would like to disrupt that and say, like, really, they didn't have to do that. They simply are expressing these mythic symbols that were already embedded within African people by the time that they arrived anyways. And so what we see is just different expressions of what he calls the African unconscious. And it's a really radical model when you think about it, because it takes the depth psychology model that says that there is a collective unconscious and really puts it back at its root to say that it really isn't just the collective unconscious. We can replace that word and just say that it is the African unconscious. And so that opens up a lot of different doors of exploration in terms of not only defining who we are on this planet, but might possibly kind of disrupt some of these myths that we are, possessed by our oppressors, and we can make those things obsolete. So when I got into that, I was just like, oh, bet, like, all right, this is it for me. And then I started, exploring more African myths, and at that time I was an elementary school teacher. And so in a way, I was kind of learning with my students anytime that I would introduce traditional African myths for reading activities and things like that. And it was just great. It was just a great time. I kind of approached myths in the same way that I used to approach the Bible, so to speak. What does this symbol mean to me? What is this story trying to communicate? How can I apply this myth in my own mythic life to show up more authentically in my relationships with other beings? And most importantly, what does this myth have to say about the legacies of settler colonialism and chattel slavery? So it really propelled me into a new world of not only exploring who I am, but also realize that my reference from my own humanity is already here, and and it's great. And just doing this work around Cincinnati, it's awesome. Yeah.
It's something that you said too, Prince, that reminded me about the importance of myths, because when you just stated about people who explain the appearances of pyramids in different parts of the world, and they make the assumption that black people must have been there to show them this technology.
Right.
And you stated that no, that this technology already existed in the people that came from that went there, because of its rootedness in African science and African thought. I was thinking about the myth of the Tower of Babel, which we're all familiar with that. And the myth that states that how humanity was one and they all came together to embark on this project, and that the creator, saw that would be a problem, and that he dispersed these people, causing their languages to be different in the process. The reason why I bring that up, because that basically backs, kind of lends support to your theory, because the people who were there, they must have all had knowledge of some kind to contribute to this project. Then the myth says that they dispersed throughout the earth. So that doesn't mean that they lost whatever expertise or skills that they had. They just took that with them wherever they went. So I kind of, I kind of felt that I thought that was interesting. Another thing that I think that I would like to talk about, and something that you hit upon, is this whole because I mean, like you, I grew up in the church also, and this tendency of outside religions, or
Mm.
that didn't originate in Africa, that have been brought to us by conquerors. Let's face it. Um, um, Labeling everything about African spirituality and thought as being somehow dark and demonic. Do you want to? Could you talk about that a minute?
Yeah, definitely. Man, I have stories for days, on that. But ultimately, though, well, there's a couple things, right? Like I had to understand that spiritual life, under religions outside of Africa, is definitely like spiritual life within coloniality, and that took a lot of unlearning, to definitely to undo, sort of speak, and I think because what coloniality is, it like how Cedric Robinson describes it is actually like a cage, but it is also a frame for how we interpret our world, and that frame is outdated, is barbaric, and it just essentially isn't true. So I think that what needs probably to take place is to how to develop a framework to begin looking right at African mythologies and African spiritual systems. Yeah, so that that within itself is definitely a process of a learning. Now, this is where I'm just speaking for me, where it might be very different for most people. I am kind of very like I need things to be like intellectually kind of brought down. I need to kind of think of things in theories or whatever. Yeah, I could just kind of jump in and be like, oh, okay, I know what this is, but like I could approach like certain myths and say like, oh, it's this and that, but not kind of like realizing that
Right.
maybe there is some, maybe I still have that colonial lens kind of set up. So at least for me, or what the depth psychology model does for me is to help me to make sense of these myths in a way that I don't kind of fall into the decolonial trap or the colonial trap or the demonic trap and things like that. So in depth psychology, what they argue is that just as much as our bodies, right, we have our own physical bodies and our bodies kind of evolve, the psyche itself is a body. So if the psyche is a body, its organs would be these things called archetypes, right? So within these archetypes, there essentially are organs of the psyche to help us as conscious beings to make sense of the world, right? So I don't know if that's like too much or whatever, but
No.
yeah, oh, okay, cool. So so in thinking about archetypes, there are essentially our response mechanisms within our psyches to drive us to live in this physical world and in ways that are to help us to survive. So you know, gosh, just like so many different archetypes that are out there. So when I look at particular like African gods or look at certain African spiritual symbols, I see those as archetypal expressions of the psyche, right? And so and it becomes very easy for me then to engage with these particular gods or to engage with these mythic symbols because within it is a code for a human experience, a code to how to have a balanced response to the outside world. So, so case in point, like long story short, right? I follow the Akan spiritual systems.
Mm-hmm.
Being in Ghana, that kind of made more sense, right? But I really start falling in love with this one particular mythology that is told in Ghana. It kind of reminds me of the story of Job. It's called The Quest of Kwesi Bonofo. Kwesi Bonofo was an orphaned son who received all this inheritance after his parents died, and he, bought a plot of land, he got married, and he had kids. But in one fall swoop, he fell upon this tragedy, and he lost everything. And he kept doing it again and again and again. And he bought land, got married, had children, and then his kids died. So this happened like 7 times to him. And so he got really frustrated with life, and he decided to dig a hole to meet the Queen Mother, or the Mother Earth Goddess, Yasasi, right? And when he approached Yasasi, he said, like, hey, everything that was taken away from me, I want it back. Like, this isn't fair. And so the Mother Earth Goddess gave him some grace and told him to cross the river, which is like kind of like underground. And when he went there, he saw everything that he had lost: his property, his children, his wives, and they all kind of circle around him and told him how much they loved him and they cared about him. And then he cried a whole bunch, and then the Mother Earth Goddess had resurrected him to come unto to the outer world. And then he started all over again. He bought his land, he got married, had his kids, and it was great. And so as I was thinking about this, I was moved, right? And that's an archetypal response, because that's what's supposed to happen. Right? Like, your psyches are supposed to respond to certain things. And so I was deeply moved. And a little did I know that, that this myth was speaking to a particular wound in my life, so to speak. And the moral of the story, at least for me in my own mythic journey, is that the thing that Kwesi Bonofo didn't do, that he didn't grieve. He never took the time to grieve when all these things were happening. And then when he was conscious of the things that he had suppressed, the Mother Earth Goddess had lifted him up. So for me, Mother Earth Goddess Yasasi, is my mythological mother. That's how I approach it. And my mythological father is Oyame. So I have mythological parents. So no diss on anyone who's a Christian, practicing Christian in a mythic sense, but it's kind of cool to have two parents instead of having a single sky daddy up there. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not, I don't know that kind of thing.
No, I mean, you're so right. Pardon me, I love that story, because what I'm thinking about, Prince, is the way that myth allows us to view each other. For example, how that myth have us relate to Black women, and the nurturing and caring part of Black women, the protection of Black manhood, something that we don't get, that we haven't gotten in the interruption of our development by the transatlantic slave trade and by the invasions of outside cultures. And that brings me to this point too, because I'm glad that you started with that story, because now we come to where you are and the work that you're doing. And how do you feel that the myth relationship, or the myth spirituality, how would that relate to our struggle for liberation today?
Yeah. I had to refer to Cedric Robinson's book, honestly, for that. And basically, in a nutshell, one could say that the Black radical tradition is indeed a form of a myth, right? And if our oppressors have their own myth, right, that they bestow upon us, we have our own myths as well. And so when we're talking about how it relates to our struggle, we can place the word myth and have it synonymous just with a vision of our people, right? The more that I read, a lot of work around Dr. Frank Welderson, and looking at some of these slave stories that I've been reading about from like Charleston, South Carolina. Our ancestors on plantation societies were definitely cultivating this particular new mythology for their own survival, which is what social mammals have to do anyways. And long story short, if we see myth as a vision for people, we could say that, that definitely the Black radical tradition is indeed one of those myths. In fact, Cedric Robinson writes in terms of order on page 203 on the last bit of that chapter, he talks about the ways in which myths, particularly our struggle, is a singular mythology that is centered around preserving the collective and trying to create new modes of being. And that's just something that African people have been doing since we first arrived here. We've either left the plantations or started our own self-autonomous communities based upon this vision that we had conjured, while on plantations. I remember reading this one particular story about how a slave master was so upset because he couldn't sleep at night because his enslaved Africans were praying in the Christian way. And so the way that I interpret those things is that, or not in the Christian way, in the African way, the way that I interpret those things from a mythological point of view is that they were setting in motion an alternative vision for the people that I think still sustains us and is with us today. And so shows like yours, the great work that Dr. Ball is doing is all a part of this new vision to create new modes of being, new ways of relationships, and to participate in the creation of history, which is what myths do. Cedia Hartman actually says myth is the threshold to history, and we're all participating in this particular history. And there's just more to Black people, I think, than we think. Yeah.
I couldn't help but I couldn't help but think about all of the stories I read about enslaved Africans who were punished just because they prayed, and who were punished, who had to hide and pray, and who had to pray in barrels of water. That was something that you brought that up. We're coming close to our time, but and definitely, Prince. I mean, this is just step one. I mean, we're going, because this is so much ground to cover. And as full disclosure, you and I are kindred spirits in this, just so everybody will know. But I wanted everyone to at least get an introduction, because you and I got some plans for this. What books would you recommend for anyone who is trying to at least introduce themselves more to this subject?
Well, yeah. This book right here, my stylist who does my locks gave me this book. So shout out to Alicia. So yeah, it's called The African Unconscious by Dr. Edward Bynum. It's a fantastic book. I encourage anyone to definitely read that. And there's this other book too that I just started. It's written by Asar Imhotep. He's a young brother who wrote this book. It's called the Bankala of North America, Living Sons of Vitality, a new name for African Americans. So he's also kind of, maybe unknowingly, right, is engaging in mythological sense, using the African cosmogram as a way to kind of root ourselves in our own identity. So in this book, he argues that the mythic symbol for African people within North America is the sun. Essentially. And so it gets really deep in there. I encourage people to watch or listen to that or read that. He has a great YouTube page, and he's worth probably having on a show, to be honest. And then, of course, this is one of my favorite books. It's called Ushaba. Ushaba is definitely like a mythological book, but kind of like what War and Peace is for Russians, Ushaba is for Pan-Africans. And so it's essentially it's a book about how African worldviews are clashing with European worldviews in apartheid South Africa, and it's told through traditional Zulu storytelling. And one of the common mythological symbols that is used all throughout the book is the Dakinga wheel, or the African medicine wheel that is, found throughout all Bantu civilizations. It's a fantastic book. You can't go wrong with Terms of Order. This is from Cedric Robinson. Of course, he doesn't kind of get into the spiritual things, but if one wants to understand how myths work in terms of how it informs our socialization, how it creates social structures around us, this book is key. And then, of course, Yurugu. I like this book a whole lot because Dr. Ani, what she does here is that she takes Dogon mythologies as a lens for critique against Western thought, and so it's just really fantastic stuff. So um, it's great. Like it's I just feel like I have a home, and all these pieces of
Well,
literature.
you
So
definitely have a home, brother, and I know that you and I spoke about having a book club, and hey, look, they say you begin a community with two people, and that's one of the Christian traditions and other traditions.
okay.
So I'm over here looking at my producer because every time I got something to say, I always look at her. But anyway, I know it's bad form, but look at this though. Is that But look, we're going to get that book club together,
Okay.
and so we invite members of our audience out there that if you want to become part of this book club, we will be having information out there pretty soon. Prince, is there any contact information that you want, or any organizations that you want to shout out?
Right. Gosh. I just really just want to shout out the Black Male Healing Circle that I helped to facilitate around here in Cincinnati. The peace movement. There's a lot of great young Black brothers that are really trying to wake up mythically and as well as like politically. I just want to shout out to all the Africans here in Cincinnati. They've all been helpful in my own development, and it's just great to kind of give back to them. And I just want to shout out, honestly, Black Power Media. I mean, dang, like, yo, y'all was killing it. I mean, I'm learning more from y'all than in my doctoral program, for real, for real. I mean, another thing I really want to shout out too is really quickly is Dr. Achille. Aile Chile, her thing on modernity. I think that that's worth checking a look out for anyone else. I'm a big fan of that kind of work, and so I can't wait for her book to shout out, to come out. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. Jackie and I, we were talking about doing road trips, and seeing that you're out in Cincinnati. We have a daughter that lives out there with our granddaughters, and may give us a reason to go to Ohio. So,
Hey.
hey, look, so we head out that way, man. Don't be surprised if we call you up and say, Prince, we's here.
Yeah. You're always welcome. Yeah, pull up. Yeah, yeah. I'll show you around. Yeah, it'll be great. It'll be great. I look forward to it.
Well, Prince, thank you, Akwesi, Prince Mensa. Thank you for being a guest today, and this, of course, you're going to be invited back because this is going to be a movement now, and we just appreciate you for being here. And as always, brother, as we greet each other in myth, thank you for being on the program, and we'll see each other in the whirlwind.
All right, sounds good. And myth. Thank you, brother.
In myth.
Right. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Greetings and welcome to the Waters of Healing. I am your host, Baba Lukman, here with Ray Wilkerson, the place where serious black men come to express how we feel, talk about the issues important to us in a non-judgmental and safe space. Our goal is that you find your inner king, your inner warrior, that you give up your power to nothing and no one. So right here I have by my side my main man, my mentor, my cousin and co-host, Ray Wilkerson. What's going on, Ray?
What's going on, cuz man? Look, I am so happy to be here with you. Look, what's going on? We got something to talk about today. We got some real stuff. I don't want to go be hurting myself, so I'm just gonna say, I am hunky dory peachy cream.
Well, all right now. All right now. And we'd like to welcome all of you who have come here to the Waters of Healing. So let's get right into it. But first, let us begin by giving honor and thanks to the Creator for giving us the gift of life, intelligence, and awareness. We seek the Creator's guidance and His help. We acknowledge our humanness in that we are imperfect beings that must rely upon the earth and each other. It is important that we develop a healthy relationship with everyone and everything around us to the best of our abilities. And we strive to be one who isn't in conflict with our surroundings. Our communities should see us as protectors, providers, and mentors, not the enemy. The Waters of Healing is intended to provide a safe, non judgmental space for Black men to talk about issues specific to us. This is an inclusive space open to all Black males, no matter your religion, class, nor sexual identity. If you identify yourself as a Black male, then you are welcome. So, Ray, hey, would you lead us in reciting the Black man's affirmations?
Here's our affirmations. 1. Kings are made and not born. I am developing the king in me. 2. Warriors are made and not born. I am developing the warrior in me. I am not a coward. Next, I believe in myself and my abilities. There's nothing wrong with me. Next, another person's opinion of me is not my reality. My masculinity is divinely given. It is not toxic. I will give up my power to no one. I realize that I am not perfect, but that is no excuse not to do my best. I love myself for who I am. I am in charge of my own happiness and behavior. I don't take advantage of those weaker than myself. I accept 100% responsibility for my own life. My past mistakes are there for me to learn from. They do not define who I am. I am the protector, provider, and guide of my family and my community. I am grateful for every day that I'm given to improve on who I am. I am a Black man created by the Almighty. Thus, I am worthy of respect and love. No matter how hard life hits me, I will keep moving forward. And at this time, look, I need you guys to just do us a favor. Just do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. And then there's this little bell. Hit that little bell for notifications so you know when we're jumping out. Okay.
Oh, man, thank you, Ray, for that, man, and them beautiful affirmations. When we come back, we will discuss what is an alpha male, what is a beta male, and where did these terms come from. Stay with us. The Waters of Healing. We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back. There have been a lot of conversations in man space when it comes to defining what and who a man is. These conversations have been around a long time. I remember when I was a younger man, I would watch talk shows like Phil Donahue, where there were debates about who and what is the ideal male. In those debates, Some would champion a man who was sensitive and in touch with his feelings, or as I would call the Alan Alda archetype. If you don't know who Alan Alda was or is, Alan Alda was an actor who starred in the hit TV series MASH, among other things. But for some reason, he was put up as the example of the kind, sensitive, caring man. By contrast, there were those who leaned towards the more stereotypical, aggressive, if you want, for lack of a better term, the John Wayne type, or if you want a black example, Shaft. Those guys who took charge, the protector, those guys who got all the girls, the ones that all men looked up to. Well, in those shows, I've heard all of the pros and cons for being a sensitive male and for the more take charge type male. Well, the debate still rages even today. Perhaps you've heard terms like bad boy, simp, the sissies, and other terms used to define the different expressions of masculinity. If you search YouTube today, you will find plenty of videos dedicated to the same conversations. How to be an alpha male are the most popular. What is an alpha male, and why are so many of us men obsessed with being the alpha male? Well, what is the definition of being an alpha male? Well, essentially, according to most sources, an alpha male is the leader or most dominant man, either mentally or physically, in any situation. The beta male, on the other hand, is the male that's below the alpha male, or the second in command. And an omega male is the lowest ranking male. Since women are more attracted to alpha males than any other type of guy, if you're not an alpha male, then you are less attractive to women than you could be, or so as the theory goes. One thing I want to point out right away is that being an alpha male is not about being a bad boy. A lot of guys avoid expressing their inner alpha male because they are confused about the difference between a good alpha male and a bad boy, assuming that to be alpha means to be mean, selfish, or bad to others. So to help clear up that confusion, let's take a look at the difference between a bad boy and a good guy alpha male. Now, these terms that I'm talking about now, this is the definition that we are that this is the definition that has been given about what this is. This is not our opinion, or this is not our position, but this is from what the definition is supposed to be about these particular terms. According to some sources, the good guy alpha male is supposed to be confident, mentally and emotionally balanced and strong, able to lead situations when needed, assertive and masculine in his thinking, behavior, and the way that he takes action. They go on to say that he's caring, loving, compassionate, charismatic, considerate, and friendly, loves people with an open heart, accepting them for who they are and hoping that they feel just as happy as he does with life. Then there is the bad boy alpha male. They got him defined as aggressive, selfish, often emotionally unbalanced, devious, prefers to see people get hurt. He can be loving, but only if it suits him. No doubt you will have come across many good guy alpha males and bad boy alpha males in your life. As you would know from those experiences, the good guy alpha males are usually those who have the respect of most people in the group, have their pick of women, have loads of friends, and are generally successful in life. Bad boy alpha males may be shown respect by others out of fear, but they are usually not the most liked or successful in life. They are able to attract hot women due to being confident and masculine, but if a good guy alpha male is available, a woman will go for him instead 9 times out of 10. Now, I say that all to say this. It is all BS. Ray, will you take over, please?
So look, one thing that we always have to know, where does this term originated from? You know the origin of certain stuff. The origin is the most important thing, and you have to also understand, whoever's talking about the origin, where they're coming from. But let's talk about it on the same concept. The concept of the alpha male comes from the animal kingdom, and its interest in the sorts of animal heresy, meaning hierarchy, whatever you want to say, led by alphas, picked up greatly in the second half of the 20th century. The term comes from the study of primates like chimpanzees and silverback gorillas. Mm-hmm. You need to really take note and hear the definition and the origin of what we're talking about. It was rarely applied outside of that particular science. In fact, the term didn't really enter into the mainstream conversation until an article was published in Esquire magazine, which was the first time that the term alpha male became part of the popular. It was Al Gore. Wow. It was Al Gore. I'm saying it was Al Gore, though, who really helped the idea of male alphas and betas blow up in the 1990s. In the late 1999, Time magazine reported on Gore's hiring of Naomi Noma Wolf as a consultant. Naomi Wolf, excuse me, as a consultant, reported that Wolf had argued internally that Gore is a beta male. Wow. That's like calling the leader of the world or the leader, vice president, whatever, your soft. Who needs to take an alpha male in the Oval Office before the public will see him as a top dog? This notion that Gore was trying to step out of the hyper-masculine shadow of Bill Clinton proved irreversible to the media. Can Gore go alpha? Wondered the Times in a 1999 article, which then offered some thoughts from experts on how Gore could achieve the alphaness he was seeking. One of those experts suggested that he was just too loyal a husband and father to be an alpha. Wow. I mean, you got to cheat on your wife to be an alpha. Oh, okay. he starts with he stays with the same woman. He likes his kids. He takes pictures with grandchildren, and he doesn't hide his age, and he's perfect in all ways, and he's a real man. Real men really aren't perfect and discreet. And naturally, Wolf didn't take well to the narrative that she was trying to turn Gore into an aggressive bulldog. Naomi Wolf, the feminist writer turned feminist campaign consultant, disputes the notion that she has been giving Al Gore secret lessons in how to bare his teeth and get elected leader of the pack. Well, I'm just going to say this, and we're going to move right along, because this is something to talk about. You know what my cousin said on the first part. If you thought that was something, this ain't. Look, I think we get ready to take. I think we need to go somewhere and talk about this thing, because this is some crazy stuff we're talking about right now.
You're right about that, and you know what? Because we got to unpack all of this when we come back from this break. So we're going to come back with a break, and we're going to start breaking it down. We'll be back after this break. And we are back. Welcome back to the Waters of Healing. Man, let me tell you something, Ray. I mean, man, now we about ready to unpack this thing now. Now, why this topic? I'm gonna tell you why, right? Because there is so many dudes, man, and even women have bought into this alpha male thing, man. There's a guy right now on YouTube, right? I don't want to call his name out. This cat is juicing he is juicing the world, man, behind it. And I ain't knocking nobody's hustle, but man, he got these women believing that this is the type of man they need. He's got men believing this is the type of man they want to be. And then what you just read, man, this stuff, man, is BS. It was like this was marketed to us. And I think what's even more ironic is that it was a woman who basically helped popularize this term, as they say in popular culture. And I remember, and I'm sure you do too, during the time when Bill Clinton and Al Gore was in the White House, and not just Al Gore. Remember, prior to Al Gore, when George Bush's father was running, and he was known as being a weakling, even though the man was a pilot in World War II, World War II veteran, but they kept on referring to him as being weak and soft. And Al Gore was getting the same thing. I think that's why Al Gore even grew the beard. He was trying to get away from that image. But you got so many men, man. You got so many men who is being sold, Ray, these bill of goods about and not realizing, man, that there's no real science in this. Not when it comes to human beings. There's no real science to this. As you had stated before, this wasn't even a concept that was even relatable to human beings, man. Up until Gordon was in the 90s. So I mean, you got people, man, that are making a lot of money off this. There are people, man, who are life coaches who are sitting around telling men that you're not good enough, you're not strong enough. You need to be an alpha male. There's this one guy that I know that we were just talking that I was just referring to, who's telling men, "Oh, ain't no woman gonna want you if you go to work every day and you love your kids." A woman wants to be cheated on. I heard a guy say that. He said that alpha males don't cheat on their women. Alpha males exercise options. That's what he says. So anyway, Ray, look, man. So help us break this down, man.
Well, when you look at the origin, right? Actually, they really don't understand. The definition that they put in origin really explains why they're killing black folks. It explains why they're shooting black men. When you look at it, when you think about this, When they first came over to Africa, they identified us as gorillas, baboons, chimpanzees.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? They said we were when we were over here 1/3 man. We were property like animals.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about it, people are scared of gorillas. I'm just stay with me. I'm just unpacking this thing. So they're making this definition to justify killing black folks. You say, how do I correlate that stuff? Because everything that they made the definition is what they said a black man was, or a black person was. There wasn't even no definition for black folk. There was no type of slavery in America until we came over here, and they described us as what they're saying as something that's strong and powerful and that's dominant.
Right.
That our genes, when we consummate with lighter skinned people, that it always comes out dark. So when he start talking about the origin, right? And I got to stay there for a second, because they described us in a manner as animals and things like that, right? So the fear. So you got to go subliminal. What is that? What are they saying subliminal when they break down the origin of where this alpha man came from? Subliminal. What is that saying to a white person?
Well, I mean, I know what it says to me. I know what I think of it when it says without that it conveys what you just said: aggressive, dangerous, hard to kill.
Yes, that's their justification. That's the subliminal. Consciously or subconsciously. See, we got to understand, consciously, you have white folks that subconsciously believe that. And the reason they believe that is because of the definition, and they got to take us out, and they're afraid because at some point they will be extinguished, right? And unconsciously, the ones that's doing it unconsciously don't, they believe it, but they don't know it. So when you start thinking about, so this woman tried to tell Gore, you need to be more like this. You need to be more like the definition that it started from as a primate. You need to be more aggressive. You need to be more assertive. You need to be like them black folk that always got attitudes. That when you that always they ain't afraid of you. You need to be like that so you can identify with those black folks so they can vote for you. See that when you say where you getting all that from, man?
Hey Ray, remember on the street though? Just to interject. Remember on the street when a dude used to get all riled up, we say, now he turned into a gorilla.
Yeah.
Yep.
Look, watch this. Think about this. Now I want to use this analogy, and I'm gonna use them. We come from all black high schools.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We used to play suburban high schools, which most of the majority was white, whose education system was better than ours.
Right.
But whenever we went to their gym, or whenever we went to play the football game, whenever we went to their school to play a game, we knew when we stepped on the court or the field that we were better than them. Because physically we were more dominant, physically, athletically. We gonna walk in and ask you, how much do you want to lose by?
Right.
We knew that. We also knew win or lose. If you wanted to go physical, we were more dominant than you. So when you understand this alpha thing, right, and you really unpack their definition, right, we don't identify ourselves as gorillas. We don't identify ourselves, but what they have done was they used that definition to frame or to justify our behavior and attitude that they're afraid of.
Ray, I was thinking about what you were saying, and I was also thinking about the points of how it's been marketed to us. Right? We see now that this isn't rooted in any science. This isn't rooted in any kind of like you were just saying. Like it's not rooted in any science. In the way that it holds any truth in it. And so it was marketed to us, man. And then I'm thinking about, and I like for us to dwell on this a little bit. I'm thinking about how this whole concept of the alpha male, right? I thought it was ironic that a woman, a feminist, would basically like blame Gore for being a decent guy. It's like, oh, he doesn't cheat on his wife. He takes pictures with his grandkids. He doesn't hide his age. He's not around like, Bill Clinton, man, he was Bill Clinton, he's known for his sexual liaisons. He plays the saxophone real smooth, slick Willie type stuff. And I think it's amazing to me that a woman, a feminist who is supposed to be fighting patriarchy is sitting up here telling Gore, you're too decent of a guy. So Ray, let's talk about that, man, because how often have we been confused, right? How often have we as men been confused? Because I mentioned in the earlier in the beginning of the show about the earlier debates that I remember about the Alan Alda type, the sensitive guy, the guy that listens to women when they talk. This whole guy who was in touch with his feelings, and he wasn't John Wayne. He wasn't the type of guy that would punch you first and then and just leave it like that. He wasn't the type of guy that would just swallow his feelings and not express how he feel. This Alan Alda type guy was the type of guy that women claimed they wanted. The type of guy that men were being told was like the ideal male. Now here it is. We found out that not too long after that women were turning against the Alan Alda type. People were turning against the Alan Alda type. Then we get into this. He was too sensitive. He was too soft. Then all of a sudden now we're looking at this alpha male terminology, and the beta male was supposed to be the second in command. And now again, women are now used as determining factor. Oh, women don't want the beta male. He doesn't want the omega. She doesn't want the omega. She wants the alpha. Yet, all these kids that's being born on this planet ain't being fathered by just alphas. So so we're looking like there is and then look at the destructiveness, Ray, of because I'm trying to tie this in too, like you were saying. But look at the destructiveness of how this been packaged and sold to us as ticking time bombs. Look at the hypermasculinity in hip hop. Which wind up seeping into real life when a lot of young people was imitating a lot of stuff that they heard on the record. They were imitating a lot of these so-called gangster rappers, and a lot. And let's not just leave it with black kids. Let's look at some of the punk rock music that was hyper masculine and all this other stuff where that the gothic thing and all this other thing that led to a lot of males believing that they had to dominate, and so what do you think about the way that this marketing to us, because we know it's BS now because you gave us the history, so we know it's BS, and yet here we are living with the legacy of this marketing ploy, ironically, made popular by a woman. Well, maybe that's not fair to say, but I would say that's made popular by the media. Let me put it that way. That's more of a correct thing to say. Was made popular by media that was sold and packaged to us. But look at the ramifications, Ray, that we got out of that when it comes to the violence in our society, the way men view themselves, the way that men view violence, the way that Hollywood has sold what the alpha male was supposed to be about. So what do you think about those things?
Well, I think when you look at the media, they have no other choice but to deplete that, to come like that. One, because when you think about it, even and you always, I always say, one, you see who the person who's giving the information and what is their history. Like you say, she's a feminist. Even if you dig deeper, I guarantee you'll find some other issues. But when you look at the media has to, she made it known that this guy is a beta, right? This guy is sensitive. This guy is soft. Well, when you look at reality, you look at the description, you look at their origin, they're describing something that they actually say the black man is, and they don't, and unconsciously, they don't even know what they're saying. And so they're making us seem more dominant, and they're making their own culture seem more weaker. The white man understands that that's how his female is looking at us, more powerful, more dominant, more sexually appealing than they are. So now they have to use the media to somehow to change that narrative, to make us look babe, to make us look sensitive, to make us look weak, to make us look all those things, right? Because they have to compensate for they're trying to compensate for their lack of ability to actually be an alpha on this world.
Wow. So and I can't help but really agree with you on that one, because when you look at all of the bloody movies, right? Jack and I, we always talk about Danny Glover, but if you look at one of Danny Glover's most iconic roles, which is Lethal Weapon franchise, Mel Gibson is clearly the so-called alpha male in this, where Riggs is clearly the beta male, and you see this a lot when with black male characters. So I think that you got a point there. I like to really examine how does this affect us as men psychologically. Growing up in the hood, and we nobody knew terms about alpha males, and we didn't know. But what we did understand, Ray, was in our communities where there was certain male behavior that was promoted, that was encouraged, as opposed to other male behaviors that were kind of less, that was discouraged, to say. For example, when you and I was coming up, it was encouraged for boys to play sports. We always talk about how back in the day we used to bring the boxing gloves out. A lot of these contact sports that you see a lot of people turning against now. A lot of parents don't want their kids playing football and all this other kind of stuff. But these type of things were kind of encouraged by the community, not just the men in the community. Women encouraged this also. If you got into scrapes out in the neighborhood and stuff, you couldn't have been a boy and run home and say that you were scared of this boy or you didn't want to fight. They would make you fight. So there was this certain type of masculinity, or this type of masculine behavior that our communities encourage. Now, on the flip end of that, if you weren't the aggressive type as a boy, if you rather play with the girls as opposed to play with the boys, if you was more into book learning than other boys or something, then that was looked upon as something else. So what do you think was the sort of the psychological harm and the ramifications of that happen with these with this rigid, because that's what it is to me. It's like, it appears to me that these rigid roles had a lot of psychological damage on young boys and growing up into men, where they had to fit some kind of template on how to be.
So you really had, us coming from the north. I think our generation, we really had no ties to the South. I mean, when you look at it, we were really, our parents, grandparents came up from the South, and I consider us, we might go down to the South to visit, but even though they had the separate water fountains and all that stuff, we didn't grow up like that. We didn't have to sit on the back of the bus, and we chose to sit on the back of the bus because we had a choice. So, and then you got to look at this narrative. You got to go back to what Dr. DeGruy said a long time ago. So the black mother had to carol down on that son. She didn't want that master to know how strong he was, how smart he was, because it caused the possibility that he could get sold. When you look at, she gave this example. This one white lady had her son, and the black lady, two sons. They grew up together, and they was real good. And they was getting these awards. And the black lady said about the white lady's son. They said, "Oh, your son Stephen is so great. He's doing so good, and this and that, this and that. Oh, I know you're just so proud of him." And then she said about Jamal, she said, "Well, Jamal is just like my son. I think he's smart in those areas. He does this and that." And her response was, "Oh no, he's all right. You just don't, child. You just don't." Because our psychological thing as a woman, they were meant to teach our boys not to be forefront, because there was a possibility that you could be sold. There was a possibility that you will be in the forefront and you will be a target. So the psychological thing came from a place where we really look at that stuff. But when you start looking at now, when you have people who are originally from the north, our thinking and concept has changed. If you notice, the younger mothers, our ages, my mom, she came from the South at 18.
Mm-hmm.
So even though she was there 18 years, but she was able to change that way of thinking when we was in South Canada, when we was in the pride. Boy, if you don't get out there and fight,
right, that's right.
Opposed to when we went down south, well, you need to be quiet.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So when you look at that narrative, it's something that we as individuals have to look at. So that narrative is changing now. So you can see why the teachers are scared of the young people, parents are scared of the young people, but the young people ain't scared of nobody.
Mm.
So when you look at little black boys now, psychologically, let me tell you something. Think about it. You can look at a nerd right now who looks like a nerd, and he even got heart.
Yeah.
The young kids in college, the young boys in college are getting A's and B's, but ain't afraid of nothing. So when we start looking at it, that's it. So we got to come from that perspective of, the narrative is changing now because we have a different mentality. Even though a lot of times, with a lot of kids, young boys are being raised in single families, but it doesn't change the fact that they're boys, right? They're boys as well. So no matter how the mother says you need to do this, you need to do this, the environment now at school, metal detectors, all this stuff. You could be afraid, but you can't be afraid. You know what I'm saying? So I think psychologically now, we especially with our young boys, they're knowing that they're being taken out. And watch this. Think about this. I'm not going to be scared, and I'm going to be dominant. And I'm going to take it. Anytime you see young kids, guess what? I was watching this video, and the police pulled this young boy over. This young boy was talking to this cop like he wasn't a cop. He said, "Man, get away from my car. What you stopping me for?" So so now the media has to depict us as this, and this, but the white media has to do something to change the narrative that white people are tough too. Look at the Republicans. Democrats are soft. Those men are soft. Republicans, they play hardball. So when you look at that, so now think about this. Think about this. They got to change the narrative to make the white man feel like he's an alpha, that he's dominant, and this like that. Think about it, and it's working. Why? They went and took over the Capitol building.
Yeah, Trump. Trump. And a lot of it was bluff because Trump tried to present himself as this alpha male and all this stuff, and you see that when it really got down to it, here they all snitching on each other now. But I do believe that there, in this term, and Jackie and I had did a show earlier today where we were talking about the redefinition or redefining, a lot of terms, especially in this world that we live in today, where the gender roles and everything that we've grown up with is changing into something else, and is being redefined, and old terms are being deconstructed and reconstructed, and all these kind of things. Now, for old war horses like us, I do believe that that the physiology of men is there for a reason, and I do. Me personally, I won't call it alphaness, but I do believe that men were meant to that men are better suited, physically, and in a lot of ways to be protectors and so much providers. Now, maybe some people might say that might be patriarchal, but I would put it this way: is the fact that that I do feel that we need to abandon these type of terms like alpha and beta, because if we're trying to have a decent society, Ray, if we're going to have a decent society, I don't see a decent society where men are being told that you're weak if you treat women nice. I don't see a decent society where men are being told that if I take pictures with my grandkids, or if I love my family, or or if I'm just comfortable with the way that I look, that I would rather have peace than to go to war. That somehow that makes me a defective male, and that no woman wants to mate with me. She don't want to. She doesn't want to carry on my DNA because I'm a decent guy. The thing that nice guys finish last and all this other kind of stuff. I think that these terms, man, that's been sold to us have been very destructive. I think that it's, first of all, we know that these terms are wrong. They have no place in a modern civilized society. They never had a place really, but they definitely don't have a place in a civilized society. They don't have a place when it comes to um, uh, um, uh, um, building community. You can't have a bunch of guys who are walking around thinking they're alpha males, running out through the community, and think that they and think that community will have harmony, or be able to organize around certain principles and stuff like that. So I think that these terms are archaic. They need to go. I think that as men, we need to start to really develop our own personal abilities and talents, and there needs to be with men too an understanding that there isn't. And I really credit women for this. I credit that the women's movement, for the most part, have done this with women, and I think men need that, because if you look at it, Ray, there seems to be, and women could bear some responsibility in this, and the culture is the fact that where women have been liberated to a certain extent from gender roles, there's still this society still wants to hold men to these archaic gender roles. You're still supposed to be the breadwinner. You're still supposed to be this. You're supposed to be that, and all the other.
And me personally, I wasn't aware of all this was going on, but evidently it's bigger than what we think. Some of you guys out here might be saying the same thing I'm saying. That's why it's good to be watching the Water of Healing, so that you can get stuff that I'm very informed, but we all can learn and grow. Because if this thing is going, when you look at the origin of it, when you look at the origin and get a backdrop of what it is and what it can be doing, how it psychologically can be affecting us. Also, you got to think about it. This was a particular person talking about a white person, about he wasn't tough enough. So what they're trying to do is now, if when you look at the African American community, one of the things that we're hearing, especially from our women, is you need to be more sensitive. You need to care about our feelings. If you don't agree with everything now, what was that other thing we talked about a couple of weeks ago? What masculine what was it called? When you over aggressive.
Oh, toxic masculinity.
Toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
So they're trying to, with the black male, they're trying to like you say. I believe I'm with you. Take away these titles. I don't need nobody to tell me I don't need to prove if I'm a dominant person or if I'm a sensitive person. I'm just a person. Period.
Right. That's right.
We just men. And you have to understand the times now, because the narrative, like you said, because men is the provider. You're the provider. You're supposed to do this. You're supposed to do that. You're supposed to do this, right? But here's here's the other piece though to that, right? And ladies, please don't take it the wrong way. But are you playing the roles that you're supposed to play?
Uh-oh. Yep.
Are you supposed to? You want us to live our traditional way as men, but are you living your traditional way as women? Well, that's another topic. I don't know where that came
not
from.
Me. I got enough hot water.
Well, that's good. That's good because your cousin, she's in South Carolina right now. She's not even near me, so I can get away with it, and I can make sure I can block her from watching this video. No, I'm joking. But yeah. So what cuz I don't want to go down that road, but just take us out. Just finish it off with what you're seeing.
Yeah, and we're going to always revisit these topics, man. But I thought it was important because I think that we as men, we need to have some self-acceptance, and we need to realize, man, that these terms are just BS. They were sold to us. They're not part of our tradition. They're not part they're not part of no African thought, and we have to have an African worldview. And be this whole alpha male, beta male, omega male. This is not This is not an African centered worldview. And so we at the Waters of Healing, this is what we're trying to be. So you know what, black man, those affirmations, look, that we say at the beginning of the show, to us, like we said, kings are made, they're not born. Which means that look, you can develop the inner king that's in you, the inner warrior that's in you, in Ray, in myself. So we don't need somebody to say that we're not men because we're not kicking our women around, and we're not being total a holes. We understand that true manhood means a person who who is not in conflict. And that's what we say at the beginning of the show. A person who, to the best of their ability, is not in conflict, who is not looked at as the enemy by their community. We compliment our families. We compliment our relationships. We compliment our communities. And wherever men go, we compliment. We're not there to dominate or to take over. We compliment, like our women compliment us. So we on the Waters of Healing, this is what we're striving to do with ourselves first, and with you brothers who have come in to share the space with us. So drop us a line. Drop, how you feel about this subject matter, whatever input you have. Drop us a line, LukeMyNation@gmail.com. And we would gladly, Ray and I would gladly answer whatever you want us to answer, or just listen to what you got to say, and just read what you got to say. So anyway, we're at the end of our program, and always I like to thank my cousin, my mentor, my friend, OG Ray Wilkinson, OGRW, the man, the myth, the legend from Camden, New Jersey. And so Ray, man, look, man, you've been great, bro. That's it. So what you got for us, Ray?
Well, greatness only comes when greatness is next to him pushing greatness.
There we go.
So I'm going to just leave y'all with this. It's a young man in Atlanta. He always say this. His name is Black Socrates, right? AKA Montoya Smith. I just want to leave you with this. All we ask is that you think.
All right. So anyway, we hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Waters of Healing. And we'd like to thank you for showing up. And a special thanks always to our producer, Jacqueline Lukman, for her technical expertise. That's right. Behind every great man, there is a woman, right? Right? Behind every great man, or in this case, behind every great man, there's a woman. So thank you, Jackie, for your technical expertise. Till next time, Black men, we love you, love each other, but most of all, learn to love yourself. We're out. Peace.
Peace out.